shout out to Greg Foreman of Black Conservative Perspective for the video he just did talking about how there was this Yale, I believe, educated economist who was asserting that if you object to manufacturing jobs being shipped overseas, that you're actually showing your support for undereducated middle America white men. Okay. See, this is the cap right here, right? It's the divide and conquer scenario that they do all of the time. When we know for a fact, and Mr. Foreman so aptly points out, that the facts are that manufacturing jobs overseas have devastated everybody, okay, in middle America. But these are the games that the left plays.
Last 2 years, Ben.
Woo! The last 2 years have been really tough.
The pandemic and inflation have hit Americans hard, increasing long-standing disparities in some communities. And African Americans want the president's attention.
As a middle-class black woman, I don't see the push for the black economic community really exploding. I think the message is being delivered, but I don't think the message is being captured in the way that we want it to be captured.
Guys, I gotta tell you, I did not think that I would live to see this day, or the day that seems to be coming in the future, the day when minorities, or so-called minorities, stop blindly voting for Democrats, which is kind of the reason why I started my channel, right? One of the missions of my channel is to wake so-called minorities up to stop blindly voting Democrat. Now, Hispanics are well on their way, right, to, not doing that anymore. And black people, up until this point, it seemed like it takes a little bit more to get black folks on board, because somehow, for some reason, the Democrats just saying that Republicans are racist, blah, blah, blah. That's all they need to do to really get black people to vote, because we know that Democrats aren't really actually passing any policies that is helping black people or anybody in this country, to be quite honest with you. I mean, the Democrat policies, in my opinion, especially when it comes to being soft on crime, seem to be disproportionately negatively impacting black folks. And it seems like black people are finally catching on. They're catching on to the Democrat Party in their games, right? Hopefully, a lot of black people in this country are becoming unbrainwashed, right? From this idea that you must vote Democrat, which has been something that has been perpetuated throughout our country since the civil rights era. So with that being said, CNN is also shocked, right? Like I am, at their own report that black people are running away from the Democrat Party in droves.
New data is now showing warning signs for Democrats ahead of the midterms. A key voting group that is considered reliably Democratic does not seem as solidly blue as it once was. CNN senior data reporter Harry Enten is joining us now. So, Harry, as we move into the midterms here, you say that we're actually seeing some real movement among a core Democratic group.
Yeah, so take a look here. This is black voters' electoral preferences and pre-election polling. Look, black voters are the core part of the Democratic Party. And as you can see here in the race for Congress, look, they're still getting 74% support in the pre-election polling right now. But compare that to the final polling for 2020 president and 2018 Congress. Back in 2020, it was 84%, 85% in 2018. So you're clearly seeing right here that there is less support for Democratic candidates for Congress among African Americans. And you can look at the Republican column as well, and you can see that 12%, not exactly high, but that's actually the high watermark. It was 9% in 2020, 9% in 2018. So basically what was about a 75, 76 point margin is now down in the low 60s. So look, Democrats still well ahead with African Americans, but in a game in which you're trying to drive up margins, the margin among African Americans for Democrats is clearly down.
So what's going on here? What's the cause of this?
There's a lot of things that could be going on. And the truth of the matter is, when you look across polling, it's actually kind of hard to build up a large enough sample size to really dig in on a lot of questions. But I think that this kind of gets at the core part of it. Take a look at Joe Biden's approval rating among black adults. If you go back to January to June of 2021, look how high it was. It's 87%. 87%, basically matching what he got in the 2020 election. But look at that approval rating now in August and September of 2022. it's all the way down to 64%. Now, obviously, Joe Biden's approval rating with all Americans is down, but it's not down by anywhere near this amount. This 23-point drop among all Americans, it's only down about 10 to 15 points. So there is a disproportionate drop in Joe Biden's approval rating among African Americans. And I think that's kind of driving why you're seeing Democrats running for Congress getting a significantly lower margin than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, that is huge. That is a huge drop there. What about, are there any states where this might have more of an effect than other places?
Yeah, so, if we're looking at sort of the battleground states, the states with close Senate or governor races in 2022, look at the black share of the electorate. These are the states where it makes up a significant portion. Georgia, the big one. Look at that, 33%. North Carolina, 23%. There's a key gubernatorial race there. Florida, governor and a Senate race there, 14%. Ohio, 11%. Pennsylvania, 10%, obviously a key gubernatorial and Senate race there. And then Nevada, where you might say, okay, that's a state with a large Hispanic population, there's actually also a large African-American population as well. So if you look across the polling, or you're looking across the electoral map, you're clearly seeing that there are a lot of places where this black voter movement could, in fact, have a significant thing that's going on. And the other thing I'll point out, you're talking about Georgia, right? This, I think, is key. Stacey Abrams, the Democrat who's basically running there, that should be a D. There we go. If you're looking at Georgia here, what you should see is you can see, if you compare the 2022 polling to 2018, Brian Kemp is clearly picking up ground overall, 6 points. His lead is 6 points larger. But among African-American voters, look at that. Stacey Abrams' lead is actually down from 79 points in the final 2018 polling to 67 points now. So in Georgia, this key state where black voters make up such a large portion of the electorate, you're seeing, again, more movement among black voters away from the Democratic Party than you're seeing among voters overall.
And then lastly, black voters aren't the only group, right, that's considered usually Democratic reliably, where Democrats seem to be struggling with them.
That's exactly right. So this seems to be a problem across a lot of groups that are sort of umbrellaed under voters of color. Look at Hispanic voters' choice for Congress, Democrats and Republicans. Look in September of 2022, Democrats at 54%. That's the same as it was in October of 2020, but it's down significantly from 2018, November 2018, when it was 60%. And look at among Republicans. Look at the support. 33% now. That is the high water mark. That margin and the choice for Congress, look at that. It was 34 points back in November of 2018. Then it became 26 points. And now, get that, it's just 21 points.
Wow, that is something. Harry, thank you so much for walking us through all those numbers.
Yeah, so I'm shocked by that. Just like CNN is shocked by that, in the sense that we see black people moving away in droves from the Democrat Party. Now, are they moving to the Republican Party? Not really, right? Republicans aren't doing that great, because if you notice, the drop in support from 2020, the presidential election, to the 2022 congressional election, it dropped by about 10 points. However, Republican support only went up about 3 points, which indicates that a lot of black people are just like, you know what, I'm not going to vote Democrat. Some of them are like, yeah, I'm going to vote Republican, but they're just like, you know what, I just don't support Democrats. So a lot of black people might just be like, you know what, F it, right? I'm not voting for either party, okay? Which is devastating to the Democrats, because if black people don't vote, basically they lose. Right. And they know this. OK, they know this. They're very well aware of this, especially in the South. So with that being said, this is not something that's just applying to the party as a whole. It is applying to Joe Biden's approval rating, and is also applying to Stacey Abrams, the Black Jesus. Right. According to the Democrat Party, she is the savior of the Democrat Party. Right. She saved the 2020 election from Orange Man. Right. That is what the Democrats said, as she whipped all the black people in Georgia to come out and vote. Now, lo and behold, 2 years later, it looks like black people aren't feeling Stacey Abrams as much as they used to. And maybe it's because Stacey Abrams is spending most of her time, when she's talking about the problems that are plaguing black people, she's spending most of her time talking about how she wants to basically continue to make it as easy as possible for black women to kill their babies. Take a look.
I want to ask you, especially before you go, about abortion. You've made headlines on that topic lately. You're not the only one. Kanye West, or Ye, talking to our Tucker Carlson this week, had this to say.
I care about the fact that there's more black babies being aborted than born in New York City.
The most recently available data from New York City's Department of Health seems to support what he's saying there. But more broadly, according to the CDC, about 38% of abortions were obtained in the U.S. by black women. The U.S. Census Bureau, though, says that just 13.6% of our population is black. Do you share Ye's concern that black Americans are disproportionately impacted, he says, by abortion?
I share the concern of women across the state of Georgia that they are being denied access to medical care. That in the state of Georgia, black women are most likely to die of maternal mortality issues because they're denied access to health care under this governor before they get pregnant. They are denied access to medical care during their pregnancy because of the medical shortage that we have in the state of Georgia, fomented by this governor.
AKA no, right? I don't care about the fact that black babies are disproportionately being offed in the womb before they're born, which is contributing to the fact that black people, our population as a percentage, is not growing, which for these so-called people that claim they want black power, right? You can't have any power if the population numbers aren't there, okay? If these black Democrats keep advocating for the things they're advocating for, being soft on crime, killing black babies, keeping black people dumb, we don't have to worry about any politicians worried about the black vote at all because the black vote will be completely irrelevant, which at some point the Democrats probably would be totally okay with. And at that point, they can just stop pretending like they care about us, right? Because we know they actually really don't. However, we do know what black people actually care about, okay? And it's not any of the things that Stacey Abrams talks about. It's not so-called women's reproductive rights. It's not voter suppression. It's not racism. What they actually really care about is crime and the economy.
The top of the list, extremely or very important, 82% said inflation. That's not so surprising. But the crime, look at that, crime at 72%, way up there, the second most important issue for the federal government to address. And then abortion, all the way down here at just 56%, basically tied with infrastructure at 57%, well within the margin of error of infrastructure. This split, with crime being so high and abortion being so low, was quite the shocker to me.
Now, those numbers are what all Americans care about, right? All Americans care about the economy and crime. And I'm pretty sure black people fall right into that category of Americans who care about the things that really are affecting them the most. But again, if you listen to the Democrats, specifically CNN, MSNBC, right, like my friend does, and I had to argue with him about this, he tried to argue with me. He said, I think that the Democrats are going to perform well in the midterms because of the GOP overturning Roe v. Wade. And I'm like, dude, no, right? No, I don't think that people are going to go to the voting booth saying that I'm going to vote Democrat and against Republicans because of Roe v. Wade being overturned, because that issue is so far removed from the average everyday American. It does not matter as much as the mainstream liberal media is trying to make it matter. They're trying to make it matter more than it is. The only people that actually really care about that issue, right, to the point where they will be a single issue voter on it, are liberal women, right, in these liberal cities, young liberal women specifically, and conservative evangelical types that are vehemently against it, right? Those are only people that will be single issue voters going out and voting just based off this. To everybody else, Roe v. Wade being overturned has not materially affected anybody's life, okay? Because these red states aren't really going so far as to just outright ban it. Again, no matter how much the mainstream liberal media wants to fearmonger, because most people just want reasonable restrictions on abortion. They don't want it to be a primary form of birth control. They want reasonable restrictions on it. And that's it, okay? And ultimately, at the end of the day, the politicians will fall in line with what their people want. AKA, look at Kansas, right? Who the people spoke and said, look, we're conservative, but we don't really actually want to outright just ban this, okay? So with that being said, these are the issues, the economy and crime, that Democrats refuse to address, which are disproportionately affecting black people, okay? We're talking about the economy, we're talking about gas prices, inflation. We're talking about the cost of living going up. Democrats, they have nothing for that, right? The so-called Inflation Reduction Act hasn't done anything at all. Crime. We know Democrats really don't want to talk about that because they're pro-crime, okay? They're pro-criminals, right? That's what they're for. They don't like law-abiding citizens. And again, who's been affected the most by that? Black people, okay? And it's about time that black people waking up to this and saying, you know what? I'm done just blindly voting for these people who clearly don't have our best interests or really even the country's best interests at heart. But we have to see if this will translate when people actually go and vote. That is the key. That is the key. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.